The JuJutsu Kaisen anime has just hit the second half of its initial run, and it's come with a brand new opening, which is just chock full of details that I would love to dissect and analyze. And because I felt that everyone else has already talked about the original opening in such detail that I wouldn't really offer up much to cover it myself, that I should instead direct all my attention to this new opening as soon as it came out, since it covered a lot of my favorite arcs and storylines within JuJutsu Kaisen itself. Though this video will obviously mention spoilers for the arcs to come and beyond, so let that be known. And if you're okay with that, come with me as we put on our best Nanami outfit and divide this opening with our own ratio cutter technique. Starting with the first 5 seconds of the opening, which start with a window at the Jujutsu High School being blown open by a gust of wind, and a black cat sitting on the window who begins to look towards the camera to reveal one glowing blue eye. Now, the cat here both assumedly represents Gojo, with him even having a glowing blue eye much the same as Gojo's 6 eyes. This is also possibly a reference to Akatami-sensei, the creator of Jujutsu Kaisen, who often personifies himself as a one-eyed monstrous cat. Also, the OP's director, Shingo Yamashita, was selected personally by Akatami to work on Jujutsu Kaisen. Along with this, the focus on a single eye, similar to Gojo's, could be in reference to the cover of chapter 51 of the manga. Somewhat reinforced by the fact that at the very beginning of the scene, it starts with a transition that comes in the form of the opening of an eye, with long, beautiful eyelashes that definitely belong to Gojo. On top of all this, you also have an effect that gives the footage a similar look to film reel, which is a common visual metaphor used for memory, likely in reference to the winds of change that happened in Gojo's past arc that turned him into the person that he is now. A stray cat within a university with the option to leave whenever he wishes. Next we have a shot from behind the Tokyo branch of Jujutsu Sorcerers, with Yuji leading the group, followed by Megumi, Nobara, then Maki, and finally Toge. The group themselves is just the team that will be participating together in the Kyoto Goodwill event against the Kyoto branch of Jujutsu Sorcerers. Then from this we have a shot of Mahito on top of a building, playfully blowing bubbles that loom over the everyday world, and can be interpreted as Mahito creating the rain that pours down onto the sorcerers. A visual example on how actions that are playful and fun to Mahito bring nothing but hardship to the rest of the world. This is also likely in reference to Mahito's plan to attack during the Goodwill event, but I'll discuss why I think that in just a second. Following this, we have a shot of Nanami walking alongside Megumi and Toge, which is a little confusing given that Nanami doesn't appear physically within this arc, but is referenced in a brief cameo during the Goodwill event itself, discussing the usage of Black Flash technique. Alongside that, Maki and Nobara are walking together, referencing how the two of them are both rivals to Maki's sister Mai, who the two will also have a major interaction with within the arc itself. Then we have Panda atop a building, pounding their chest in a gorilla-like fashion, in reference to Panda's 3 cores, specifically their transformation during the Goodwill event against Mekamaru. Along with this, the scene specifically references the Gorilla Mode special attack, the unblockable drumming beat, which is then followed up by a dynamic shot of Yuji alone, which is a reference to the fact that this arc's major focus is him learning Black Flash, along with how he will be targeted specifically by the Kyoto branch of Jujutsu Sorcerers. Next we have a shot of Gojo walking within the rain, carrying memorial flowers and in his casual uniform, likely on his way to pay respects to his believed at the time dead best friend Geto, which will be given a greater context in the Gojo flashback arc that I mentioned earlier, but this is definitely post his flashback arc given that Gojo's Infinity is activated and is preventing the rain from touching him as he walks, which is a very cool detail. Then next we have a shot of the bubbles that Mahito was blowing, popping and dissolving, with the reflections on the bubble appearing to be the Jujutsu headquarters, referencing what I mentioned earlier with Mahito planning to attack the school and stealing cursed objects from their vaults. The bubble popping also dissolves in a similar manner to how Mahito will lower the barrier of the school to enter it, while Gojo is distracted elsewhere, which is again showing that the bubbles that Mahito are blowing are metaphorically him raining hard times down onto the group. Then the next shot has a butterfly landing in a field that pans up to Yuji, Megumi, and Nobara walking forward onto their next adventure, likely being the Death's Painting mission. Following that, we have a shot that opens with the crew of the Tokyo branch together, but with Maki being so forward up with the rest of the crew, this might be referencing the team accepting their recommendations to rank up within the organization, as post the Death Painting arc, Todo and Mai Mai, another higher up Jujutsu sorcerer, make recommendations for Maki, Yuji, Nobara, and Megumi, along with Panda, but they seem to be missing from the scene and may be included later on in the opening. From here we we have a shot of Geto pouring hot chocolate onto a magic chocolate ball, which in turn transitions into a scene of Utahime fearfully walking through the woods that have been recently barriered off by a curtain created to interrupt the Goodwill event and distract Gojo, with the visual implication that Geto pouring the hot chocolate being the curtain going up, given the liquid of the chocolate looks similar to the dark liquid that covers a location when you create a curtain. From here we have a shot of Nanami walking down the street at night, which again plays into Nanami's minor cameo during this arc, where it's likely him leaving the cafe where he's interviewed about his usage of Black Flash, which is then followed up by a shot of Momo, a third year from the Kyoto branch, flying high above the water, likely patrolling her area. Then we have a shot of an unfinished cream pan laying on the ground with ants on top of it, likely in a way to symbolize the destruction brought by this event, as Mahito left a lot of bodies in his wake. The unfinished cream pan showing how sudden this attack likely was, reinforced by the following scene of Mahito within a room, the same room that he has a man crucified to the wall and plans to implant the cursed womb within. And if you look in the background, you can actually see the man silhouetted out, actually, which is another one of those changes that might occur later in the OP's run. Then we have a shot of Sukuna standing calmly on what looks like the location where Megumi and a finger bearer fight during the death painting arc, which is calling to Sukuna commenting on Megumi's growth during this fight, since he watches it via the finger and Megumi awakens his domain expansion during this, even though he isn't able to fully complete it. Following this, we have a droplet of blood hit a wooden floor and spread, likely in reference to Noritoshi Kamo and his blood manipulation ability, as the wooden floor is the location where him and Megumi's fight takes place, which I feel is reinforced by the next shot of Noritoshi when he was younger being forced into the Kamo family from a very young age, which is an event that he reflects on during his fight. Along with this, the scenes that follow are also flashbacks, starting first with Panda's creation, and their discussion with Masamichi about their three cores and how they have three spirits living within a single body. Following this is Maki and Mai's childhood, with Maki holding Mai's hand and guiding her past a scary spirit that only Mai could see, which shows the difference between the two sisters and how Maki has always held a leadership position between the two, and how she's always been extraordinarily talented, which is something that is reflected on during the arc. Then we cut to Yuji sitting in a car looking at his own reflection, likely on his way to the death painting arc's location, with this scene followed up by a shot of Gojo's own eyes, with one of them covered up by a beam of light, which looks like it's coming through a brush of leaves, and with the wind blowing his hair, this is likely the aftermath or right before his attack that ends the Goodwill event arc. But it's also likely a way to have him mirror Mahito in a sense, as the light on his eye gives him a forced visual of heterochromia. And Nanami even compared Mahito to Gojo during his fight with him, and Mahito's whole plan for this entire arc is to get an object to take care of Gojo. Though speaking of fighting, we get our major action shot of the opening, with the first line of offense going after Hanami, the cursed spirit of the forest and the major threat of the Goodwill event arc. Starting first with Megumi using his Max Elephant to attack, which is funny because he actually doesn't use Max Elephant during the fight against Hanami, but instead in the previous fight against Noritoshi, who is next to attack with his slicing exorcisms. And then we have Toge entering the scene in a similar fashion to the beginning of the fight, where he told both Megumi and Natoshi to run, but seemingly he is dishing out his deadly blast away command. Then we have 4 cutaways before we return to the action, with the first being a reference to the flashback that happens within the death painting arc discussing the Cursed Womb Brothers' origins, with the original Noritoshi Kamo, the ancestor to the one that appears within the Goodwill event arc, who is known as the evilest jujutsu sorcerer to ever exist, and was the one to use his blood manipulation to mix the blood of curses with that of human to create the Cursed Womb Brothers. The scene likely depicts him in a rainy temple where the woman who gave birth to the brothers fled to with their corpses. This is then followed up by the ruins of the temple in which the sorcerers were fighting Hanami, which has one of the most powerful cursed tools laying among the rubble, this being the special grade Playful Cloud, which Maki brings to confront Hanami and support Megumi and the rest. It is later used by Todo as well. Then we have a photo of the Kyoto branch together pinned up onto a corkboard. This is likely done in a way to both show how close of friends the group were, along with playing perfectly into Mekamaru's own dream of having a healed body and being able to join his classmates in person, which is in a sense foreshadowing his actions in both this arc and the future ones to come. And then finally we have a shot of Yuji preparing to hit a baseball, Todo playing catch catcher, and Momo hovering above, ready to catch a ball if it gets hit. This is in reference to since the Goodwill event got interrupted, the staff decided to have a baseball game to fully settle the score and decide who the winner of the event is. Also, the three characters that appear here arguably have three of the best scenes during the baseball game itself. Then we return to the action, with Todo and Yuji fighting Hanami together as best friends, with us even getting a glimpse at Todo's own curse ability, Boogie Woogie. But then the action is cut off yet again by two more scenes. One showing Mai Mai on top of a building being flocked by a murder of crows, likely belonging to her kind of creepy brother, and then we see my boy Yuta Okatsu, the OG JuJutsu Kaisen MC, with him studying overseas to master his curse ability. If you want to see me discuss the events of JuJutsu Kaisen 0 and learn more about Yuta, then please tell me below. But then we return to the action with Todo giving Yuji words of advice and encouragement to motivate him to use Black Flash. A cutaway to Gojo preparing to fire off his hollow purple attack as purple lightning surrounds him, reinforcing what I said previously about the close-up shot of his eyes. Then we continue on to Yuji, Nobara, and Megumi walking together, which is then followed up by a flower in a pool of water beginning to bloom, likely in reference to Megumi's own growth during the Death Painting arc, and the fish looming around the flower seemingly in reference to Sukuna, watching him develop. And then we finish off with Yuji's first Black Flash punch and title drop. But right before the end, we see someone playing a guitar, which may seem like a cool visual to go along with the music, but is actually the weapon of choice of the principal of the Kyoto branch, who uses a technique that allows the melody of his guitar to blast out powerful waves of curse energy. Then the whole OP plays in reverse, with a similar film effect from the beginning of the OP laid over top of the events, likened to how all the events led to Yuji learning Black Flash. This includes the rain from the beginning, as Yuji uses the mental image of a raindrop to time the Black Flash's activation, with that visual effect even appearing within the OP itself. Along with this, the rewind effect, the rain, and all the reflections and mirror imagery that play throughout this OP are a major theme of it, with reflection being the key focus, from the minor reflections in the window at the beginning to the important reflections like the ones within the bubble. Reflections often symbolize knowledge and looking back at one's past to grow from it, with the key element of this entire arc itself being memories, with either being imaginary memories between Todo and Yuji being best friends through high school that led to a budding friendship between them that overall led to Yuji's growth, or a glimpse into Mai and Maki's own troubled history. Along with this, the song in the OP, Vivid Vice, by Huya Extended, was written with love, as Huya has been a major fan of Weekly Shonen Jump since they were a child, and found themselves loving the story of Yuji within JuJutsu Kaisen. The lyrics were crafted with the express purpose of capturing the feeling of the series and the arcs that it will be playing over, talking about not only forcing yourself to move through the pressure and struggles of life, but how going back is impossible at this point, referring to the most important part of the Goodwill event, which is Yuji learning how to harness his curse energy correctly so that he can use Black Flash, and after learning it, he nearly broke the consecutive usage record on his first attempt. Honestly, Shingo Yamashita really knocked it out of the park with this one, and for future changes to come down the road, as I expect there to be as the anime continues, I imagine the scene with Mahito's apartment will change and the background will get more detailed as time goes on. Along with this, maybe the rewinding event will be replaced with new memories to come. Hopefully you enjoyed this opening analysis. I had a lot of fun digging through a lot of the elements and visual aspects of this opening, and I hope I didn't miss anything, though if I did, please tell me below. And with that all said and done, if you enjoyed this video and want to support me and my channel for the future, I have a Patreon at patreon.com/ManyNotTheBadGuy. And if you want to reflect on your own past and overcome your hardships, you can do so by buying a copy of Shimoneta, A Boring World Where the Concept of Dirty Jokes Doesn't Exist at buyshimoneta.com.